Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by NDIS Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Hello, everybody. My name is Debbie, and you're listening to the SDA Housing Podcast, a show that explains, highlights, guides, and brings awareness about all things SDA in this ever-changing NDIS world. And today we have a very special guest speaker. We've got Cassie from Bluewing. Cassie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Debbie.
Great to have you, and really looking forward to learning a bit about what you guys do. So, firstly, tell us about Bluewing, more specifically how it started, where it started, how big the business is growing, and the wonderful people that you have involved in your organisation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, Bluewing, we have been around for 5 years at the beginning of this year. Our founder, Zoe, built this business out of a passion for wanting to, enable people to live their best lives and just give them room to breathe and just take that pressure off supports. So Zoe started this in Sydney in New South Wales with support coordination, and we have rapidly grown from there. So we've been in Queensland for a little over 3 years now. We currently have just moved into a new office in Campbelltown in Sydney, and our office in Queensland is in Beenleigh, which is very convenient between Gold Coast and Brisbane. I have come on as the Business Development Manager for all things housing, which is why I'm here.
Fantastic, yeah.
So a little bit about Bluewing. We offer supports from allied health such as OT and speech therapy, plan management and support coordination, and core supports, so in-home and community access, and then, of course, housing, so SIL, short-term and medium-term accommodation. And, that's a bit about us. We currently have, I believe, I should know this a lot better, I believe we have 8 SIL properties in Queensland and rapidly expanding, and also growing in New South Wales as well.
Fantastic. So you just got the 2 offices, Campbelltown and Beenleigh?
That's right.
Yeah. How many staff have you got? How many are you in total?
Good question. I believe that it's about 500 staff, including goal facilitators. So goal facilitators, we refer to them as that because they're here to assist our participants, our clients, to reach their goals in life. So, that's a little bit about us and what we do.
Wonderful. So you operate in Queensland and New South Wales, I take it. Do you just concentrate in the urban areas where your offices are based, or are you further afield?
We are further afield. So in Queensland, we have SIL houses out towards Beenleigh. So we sort of will go where the requirement is. So we won't say no to anybody, essentially. That particular house at Beenleigh is actually a really lovely story about assisting 3 ladies who their previous provider couldn't continue providing the supports. I guess they had a very narrow-minded views when it comes to funding and how to best provide accommodation and housing supports for participants. So Zoe, our founder, has come in and taken, a holistic point of view and looked at ways that we can support, and using that community and having the engagement from, that local community has definitely helped with making that beautiful house out there a success. So we are in metro areas, but we do expand out. Currently working on some new housing out towards Ipswich and also in Redlands, Gold Coast, obviously Campbelltown, Penrith, etc.
Okay, fantastic. So you did touch on the services that you are basically offering, but do you want to go into a bit more detail about, everything that you cover really?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the difference for Bluewing is that we've come from Zoe, our founder, has actually worked for the agency. She has worked in nursing and really has a point of view of, looking at the participant's whole life. So the difference, I guess, with us is no matter what service we're looking at the ways we can provide holistically. So whether that is coming in, somebody might call requesting some help with support coordination, or say they just think I need an OT report for an assessment. It's then that OT is then able to get a better understanding to find out, well, why is it that you've been referred? So everyone from our OTs and speech therapists to our goal facilitators, our service coordinator, has a understanding of the NDIS and different ways we can provide supports. So, yeah.
Fantastic. So in terms of the housing, which is obviously where you specialise, you have the SIL properties, and for any listeners, I know we've talked about this before, but just to clarify, that's supported independent living, where you have these properties that you actually put your clients in. They live in those properties so that you can provide them with the supports that they need.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So supported independent living, or SIL, can happen in a lot of different housing environments. So that can be properties that perhaps the participant or their family own themselves. Perhaps it's a property that Bluewing owns. We head lease on behalf of participants. And then also it comes with SDA. So that's where organisations like yourself come in, the specialist disability accommodation. So partnering with an SDA provider who provide the bricks and mortar, as they like to say, and we will come in as the SIL supported independent living provider and provide those day-to-day supports for the participant in the home.
Yeah, so that was going to be my next question.
Okay.
So, on the SDA front, so how many SDA properties do you operate in?
8 SDA properties. So we definitely have the majority of our SIL clients are in SDA properties.
Mm-hmm.
They vary from 1-bedroom unit in like a complex type arrangement to 4-bedroom houses.
Mm-hmm. So
even with those 4-bedroom houses, the maximum amount of, clients or participants is only 3 with that 4th room for staff.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that we deal with a lot when we're talking to potential owners of these properties, the investors, is we, it's not just about buying a house. It's not just the bricks and mortar, but as an investor, they really need to understand how the whole tenancy works. So that's where you guys come in. Obviously, the SDA provider will have the lease agreement with the owner of the property, but the most important people really, and of course, except for the tenants, are yourselves, the SIL providers, because you're the ones there that are actually working on the premises, providing those supports and that care to the participants living in the property. So, could you tell us a little bit about, the challenges that you find in that environment? And that's obviously going to be different whether it's a single tenant unit or a 3-tenant house.
Yeah, and definitely, and different between different participants, right? So not only, are we there to support that client or participant, but really to care for that home, to make it a home for those people. So, for people that own these SDA properties, it's not only, you're opening up your property to participants or people with disabilities, but you're opening it up to providers to come in, and how are they looking after your house, and what things do they have in place to ensure that your greatest asset, in most cases, are well looked after. So being able to have goal facilitators that provide supports for the participants in the houses that really vary from those intimate personal care supports all the way through to, gardening, looking after, cleaning and looking after the home, I guess is really important. So often our clients might just need that support with being able to clean the bathroom properly or be able to get outside so they can, be in the garden, that sort of thing. And we're there to provide those supports as well as the more seen, I guess, or the more viewed support of the physical
personal care. That
personal care support. Yeah.
And do you have participants from all the different funding levels, or do you concentrate on one particular type?
So we do have very much a varied. So we have a 2-to-1 ratio, so where there's 2 support workers with 1 client or 1 participant, all the way through to 1-to-3, so 1 support worker with 1 participant, and really a variation in their requirements and the supports they require. So we don't have a specific focus in terms of the type of person that we're supporting. We more view it on how can we support that person. So whether that means, recent participant comes on board and they have quite a complex medical background. We have registered nurse on staff, and we have the training capabilities and capacity here. So we were able to hire new staff and also train existing staff to meet that participants' level of supports that they require. So I guess it's more about looking at, if we're the best person to provide that support, how can we do that in the best way possible?
Mm-hmm. So not so important whether they've got high physical support or improved livability funding. It's more just how they match together with what you can provide in terms of a holistic, complete approach to bettering their life.
That's exactly right. And I think, also thinking about other difficulties when it comes to housing and SDA and SIL is, are they a match for co-tenant? As an example, there's, it's very easy to get into that thinking of, well, they've got a similar disability, so therefore, they'll be fine to live together. Whereas what you find quite often is that, it's not anything to do with a person's, capacity or disability or anything like that, but personality and who they have around them, their support networks and their stakeholders involved in their lives are going to be just as important in that matching of tenants or people living in the same house as any, physical support requirements that you might have.
Yeah, I imagine it really is all about personality.
100%.
Yeah. So when it comes to the SDA participants that you look after, do you assist in them going through their funding application? Is that something that you guys do?
Yes, we most certainly do.
Yeah.
What a challenge.
I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, it's, I guess, again, as I mentioned earlier, Zoe has that background of working for the agency as a planner. So being able to have that better understanding of what things are required when we put an application in. I also have a background as an LAC, so I have that experience.
And that is a local area coordinator.
That's exactly right. So they're the people in the community that act on behalf of the agency when people access the NDIS.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so having those skills to be able to understand what is required in a report, as an example, from perhaps an OT all the way through to as a service provider, what reports or what information is the agency going to get value or understanding about that participant from reading a piece of paper. And it's very hard to put everything you know about someone and all the supports and requirements that we know they require on a piece of paper, but having that education and understanding from working in this industry, it does definitely assist to know what are the buzzwords, what are the NDIS going to understand versus what's completely irrelevant. Yeah.
Fabulous, yeah. Okay, moving away from the SDA topic, respite, do you do much in the way of STA, short-term accommodation?
Yeah, we definitely do short-term accommodation and medium-term, I guess, as well. Short-term accommodation is really about, again, as we said before, looking at what that participant requires. So it's, not necessarily the bricks and mortar of a support, but holistically, what is it that they're going to get benefit? What are their goals, and how are we going to be able to reach those goals by providing, this respite or this short-term accommodation, whether it be for a weekend or for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how many participants roughly would you look after in total? How many clients?
1,300. I'm really sorry. I'm prepared on that question.
That's okay. No, that's a lot. Yeah. So 2 offices, 500 staff. That's a lot of clients to be looked after.
Yeah. And, it's really come, I guess, in such a short but long amount of time. That COVID period felt like such a long time. But it's all the growth has come from coming back to that support coordination and that personalised care of what participants needed. So we haven't just come straight in as a SIL provider, a supported independent living. We've started at the assisting people to access NDIS, and then what comes from there.
Yeah. So you really do cover so many bases. So back onto the respite, when you do have, we know that potentially pretty much any NDIS participant can take respite, but ideally it's got to be, within their goals, or whether they're regular informal carers do need that break. So for 1,300 clients of yours, there's a lot of them that I'm imagining you would be looking at assisting them to get respite stays.
Yeah, definitely.
Outside of their regular living environment.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess, as you said, it all comes back down to their funding, but also their goals. So, a teenager whose family, want to go away for a weekend and they're, 17, 18 years old, well, that is a great goal, to be able to stay at home, on their own, but with supports to be able to do that as his peers would, versus, a participant whose family just need or want to go away and have that support to enable them to go to the Gold Coast and still be able to receive the supports they did while they're in home. So those personal care supports, so that their loved one could still go on that time away for them. So it's very, short-term accommodation is such a varied topic.
It is. Every single case is going to be unique.
It is. And
really.
It's interesting to see the different options that are popping up there, but also, again, just coming back to what is in their goal, what does their plan say, and what is their goal for their, for that plan. So making sure that we're not just creating something out of nothing, but does it realign to what they were funded for in their plan?
For sure, yeah. And when you do look at a respite break for a participant, for example, they do want to, as part of their goals, they want to, learn to live a bit more independently and experience new things. So maybe they do want to go on a trip to the Gold Coast, for example, and spend a week down there doing new things and having adventures and whatnot. Do you work with other organisations that might have specific respite properties, or do you just book wherever, depending on the needs of the participant? How do you work it?
Yeah, good question. It's very tailored, so a combination of both, definitely. It can be just finding, an accessible house for them to stay in where we can provide those supports, or it can be utilising a provider that has an existing, accommodation down there that we could utilise, or really it could just be, is the best use of their funds to get a self-contained apartment where that is accessible for them to use or meets their support requirements, so we can provide that support in. So it's very tailored to what that person requires, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a really exciting topic, and we are, we're starting to do some respite work in terms of we working with a number of property owners that want to offer their properties up for respite for NDIS participants. And yeah, so it's coming in from that other side to work with people like yourselves. Okay, here's a fantastic property if it suits the particular participant. So I think that more people are realizing that respite is an option, and a lot of people do have either that in their funding, or they can use their core supports if the money's there, if they have that as one of their goals in their plan. So, I think it's so valuable for people to be able to take these respite breaks.
100%. I really love that idea of utilizing properties that exist, as you said, and people that are willing to open up that. I mean, if you think back a few years ago, there's those movies of people that exchange houses on different sides of the countries to live in a different environment for a short period of time. Is there opportunities for, participants to do something similar? Perhaps, I've got a client that would like, to go down in Sydney, and there's a client in Sydney that would like to come up to Queensland. Is there a way that we can essentially swap their house or their where they live for a period of time so they can, have something different, experience a different environment and a different life for a little while, but still be supported?
Yeah, that's exactly it. They have every right
100%
to do these things as the rest of us do. So I'm really excited that this is an option for people and becoming known, I guess, with more NDIS providers, that it is viable for a lot more people than maybe some providers realise.
Yeah, that's very cool. I love it.
Yeah. So back onto the SDA world, because that's obviously where we've focused. Tell me, I guess I know you say you don't really focus on the disabilities, but just as a rough breakdown of your particular clients that you've got in SDA homes that you look after, how are they mainly all accessible, so they're in wheelchair homes, or do you have a lot that are...
I would say 50-50 between robust, so maybe some of those behaviours versus fully accessible or high physical support. So more of those physical requirements, such as the wider doorways and the accessible kitchen.
Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting, because I know as a whole across Australia, the majority of SDA funded participants are expected to be improved livability. So they're neither robust nor need a wheelchair accessible property. But obviously that's, I guess, just the clientele that you have started to work with, and that's who they are, and they need those specialised supports, that holistic approaches you said that you can provide.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess that improved livability funding and the requirements for that is just so varied in terms, you can't just say, well, that's what that person's disability would mean that they would get improved livability, because it is such a open option that it ticks boxes for a lot of different people. So that maybe they do need more of a accessible house, but they've ticked so many boxes on one thing that the NDIS have funded them improved livability. So
yeah. So with all the participants that you've assisted who access SDA funding, have you seen a lot of rejections and you've had to go back and ask for a review of that, or do you find that they're kind of getting it right?
I guess a 50-50. I think the support side is, in my experience, more difficult to get right than compared to the SDA funding side. Although we do have times when they don't end up with SDA funding despite enormous amount of backing or evidence as to why they require that. But I do find that that SIL or that support side is more difficult to obtain rather than the SDA side. Perhaps that's because we are also, the clients that I am helping are also at that high need where the criteria, the eligibility and the evidence is overwhelming for them to be able to obtain it. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting, really interesting. So I know I look at the stats in the data and the different disability types, and it's just so complex. And then when we look at the funding for SDA properties and the different funding levels with the different support levels, and then having to, try and put all of that in the mix, it's so complex. And I think people who are not in that system just have no comprehension
definitely.
of what it makes to make it work.
Yeah, it's so difficult. We do have clients transitioning from hospital, I guess is a big part of my role. I'm working on that transition period. And, perhaps they've come to us just with MTA funding while that application is in for SDA and SIL. And then the supports we're providing them and the environment they're living in under MTA, you're like, this is perfect. This is exactly what they need. And then that plan comes back and you're like, how have they even justified funding this in comparison to what we can see, the improvement of their life based on the fundings they're now receiving? So it's definitely a challenge. And then, as you said, just then matching that SDA support and the funding they're receiving under SDA versus the supported independent living, even that doesn't match up. So you're saying, well, you're, 1 to 3 under SDA, and then, maybe it's like 1 to 6 under SIL, or, just absolutely crazy things. You're like, who's even written this, or how have you come to these conclusions?
Wow. They've got a way to go yet. But, it's so complex, and I guess it's just part of the process, working through these different complexities to get it right.
Definitely.
Yeah. So where does Bluewing see themselves in 12 months' time?
In 12 months' time? Yeah. Continuing to expand, I guess, finding more long-term and sustainable housing options for our clients. So, with SDA and SIL, participants, that we can just put them in that forever home. So it's not just a stepping stone or an interim solution, but working with SDA providers such as yourself to ensure that we're going to have longevity with the tenancy matching, the supports matching, and also that this is somewhere that the participant wants to live and they're going to, be there. Yeah, essentially be there forever home. So just that's, for me, that's my biggest goal. And I know the team agrees, is that finding those solutions that aren't temporary, but growing that support and those networks for people to live in their forever homes is definitely important.
Yeah. Are you thinking of expanding into other areas, other states?
We sure are. We've dipped our toes in Victoria, so really on that. Yeah, at the moment, just really building our Southeast Queensland base is important, and then also housing in Sydney, and really working on finding options for people. Again, that is going to be a permanent solution. In Sydney, it's such a difficult housing market to get into for anybody. So finding, long-term housing for our participants is really vital down there. Yeah.
I can imagine, yeah. Would you be looking at purchasing? I think you did say you own some properties already, some SIL properties.
Yeah, and that is something that we'll continue to look at. Yeah, for sure.
Any SDAs or just SILs or both?
I'm not really sure about that one. If there was never-ending bucket of money, I'm sure that would be a great option. But being able to work with providers like yourself that really have that background and understanding and knowledge about what is required from an SDA, it makes my job easier. So,
okay, so just to actually let you know, we're not actually SDA providers ourselves. We're actually a real estate agency, but because we only work in NDIS property, that's where we specialise. We work more as advisors, bringing together the builders, the investors, the SDA providers, yourselves, all the SIL providers, just to bring everyone together to make it happen.
Perfect. Yeah. And apologise for my lack of knowledge.
That's okay. Actually, it's very common. We have a lot of people that do come to us and assume that we are providers because we're so kind of, I guess, vocal in the area in terms of educating and just advising, what SDA is all about.
100%. A wealth of knowledge, I think, for me, being able to, when I have access to your website, is just seeing that wealth of knowledge that you guys have.
Yeah. Well, that's. I think it's so important because there's so much that needs to be understood for anybody. It doesn't matter what part of the SDA world they're moving into, whether it's that as a developer or a builder, or they are looking to invest, or they want to become a provider. Then it's just so many aspects to it that need to be understood.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, we do our best to get the knowledge out there, and very much a part of that is interviewing people like yourself to find out your little part of the SDA world, which it's really important part too, is the actual provision of supports in SDA properties.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Cassie, any last words on what you do, on how you see the SDA market or the NDIS, in the overall NDIS going? Any last thoughts that you want to leave us with today?
Yeah, thank you. I am really excited to see the growth and changes. I think a lot of the time people are scared of those changes. I'm excited that there are people out there like ourselves that are looking at alternative ways or holistic views or just different options for people with disabilities. And like you mentioned earlier, just looking at short-term accommodation differently or who people live with differently. So yeah, I guess for Bluewing Care, we're really excited about this space and just seeing the change that comes and just rolling with the punches and just being there to support our participants. That's why we started and why we are continuing to do what we do.
Awesome. Well, I absolutely love what you're doing, and thank you so much for your little spot in this NDIS world. And yeah, looking forward to hearing more about where you're at in, say, 12 months' time or 24 months' time, and new locations you're working in, new properties that you're investing in to help your clients to live their best life.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me, Deb.
You're welcome, Cassie. Well, it's been lovely to chat to you. And thank you for sharing with us today.
Cheers. Thank you again.
Hey, bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.